It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Gareth Gallagher. Hello, Gareth. How are you?
I'm well, thanks, Douglas. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you. Thank you for coming on the show. Nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
So you've got a big book launch coming up on Thursday. I'm sorry I can't be there in person, but thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome.
It looks like it's going to be quite an event. How many people do you expect to be at this thing?
We are hopeful to have around 120 people in total. You know, it really is a media outlet for the book, and we are hosting it at the Sofitel in Los Angeles. So, yeah, it's exciting. It's an opportunity for me to present my story, as well as we've got some food and entertainment, and really kind of, we're treating it as a kind of event in itself, really. So we're gutted you couldn't make it.
Well, it sounds like, are you going to be giving a presentation, actually like a stage presentation about the book?
Yes, I will. And it'll be videoed, so we'll be able to share that with you. So I'll be talking around the book for during the evening, as well as a signing, and then we'll be having food and drinks from around the world of places that I've lived in. And it's going to be an exciting kind of culinary experience with some entertainment as well to kind of finish the night off.
Okay. Is this a usual thing for a book launch? I mean, I haven't heard of too many of these.
No, it's definitely not. But it's also really for us. I mean, being an events company, it's like going to the hairdresser with bad hair, right? You just don't do it. So, when you're coming to an event of us, like, we're going to really, showcase what we do in the company, as well as our, my 25-year career history in events. So it's very untraditional, but that's me. I'm a very untraditional person.
Well, nothing wrong with that. Are you still doing events, or is that a retired profession for you now?
No, I'm still very much in events. Just do things very, very differently to how they were done in the past. I still run an events agency based out of Los Angeles and also out of London. So still very much at the in the forefront, and I still love what I do in events. It's still bringing people together, and even more so, I think, after what we've gone through in the last recent years with the pandemic and things coming back together. I think we've all realised that need to connect with people is more important than ever. So, yeah, I'm still here, loving it as always.
COVID must have shut you guys down pretty much for a couple of years, yeah?
It really did, yeah, it really did. We really did close operations and keep a very minimal base for the duration, really. I was very, I realised very quickly up front that, this was going to be a long stint. This wasn't, we weren't in the brigade of people that kind of thought, oh, this is only going to be 3 months where we're back to normal. We realized very quickly that, and some of the clients that we work with, we work on big events, we work on events from, 5,000 to 100,000. So, and even now those events are far and few in between. They haven't come back as yet like they used to be. They are slowly but surely coming back, but we've seen a huge change in the industry as a whole.
I know when COVID came out and the lockdowns happened and we were, halfway through 2021, I was thinking to myself, you know what? People are going to, even once this thing is over with, people are going to be afraid to hug each other and to touch each other now. There's going to be this sort of permanent scar left from COVID. Do you think that's true?
I would say that COVID has really changed the way that we operate. Absolutely. I would say that I think, really there is still some reminiscence of that. I think we've forgotten how to smile and be nice to people. I think because we spent 2 years walking around with masks covering up our face, So I do think that that's still, we still see a lot of that. And I think people are a lot more cautious. We see it in the travel space. I myself always wear a mask when I travel on a flight, regardless of how long it is, and even sometimes if I'm on public transportation. So I do think there has been a change as to how we integrate into society, and particularly around the event space. But I'd say, we're pretty much back to, operating as we did, before COVID, but with a much more integrated health and safety management, which is really probably needed in our industry, to be honest. And I talk about this a lot in the book around, how we have to change our practices, with how we do operations.
Let's talk a little bit about the book. The book is called Eventually, Gareth, Truth and Lies of the Events Industry, a story of bombs, booze, and blackmail. Now, this sounds like a tell-all sort of book, is it?
It really is. It really is a show and tell-all. You could coin that phrase, a professional confessional. Absolutely, if that's the one thing people take away from it. But I think it also shows the resilience of my own personal story and how we can overcome. The human spirit is able to really overcome some very, traumatic hurdles in life. But it's definitely a show and tell all in the hope that it will be a force for change, for good. And so my aim for it is that it not only helps companies and organizations really look at how they operate events and why they are operating events, and look at their processes around that, but also for people to really see how, there's no question I've been put through the ringer in my life, and I think that it really will showcase the resilience of the human spirit.
Is Prince Harry in it?
No, and even if he was, I could never disclose that. But no, I shall say on that front.
He seems to be on every other, so I didn't know if you had some good dirt on Prince Harry in there.
There's plenty of dirt in the book, but I won't be putting any claim to that for sure.
Well, give us a little teaser of it. We don't want to give it all away. We want people to buy the book after all. Bombs, booze, and blackmail. Can you give us a little sample of what that's about?
Yeah, absolutely. So my story covers a 25-year career of working in events and the media industry, from the early 2000s into where we are today. And, over those years, I've been through some incredible life experiences. And, I've been responsible for thousands of people when I've had to, or there has been a significant or traumatic situation take place. And I talk about in the book, how the show always had to go on no matter what was happening. I always had to continue, and I always put service above self. So during some of these bombings that occurred, and earthquakes where we had groups of people that we were looking after, hundreds, if not thousands of people, we always had to continue. And that was very much my ethos throughout the whole of my career to date in events. So I tell these incredible stories of being on site, running events, when a bomb goes opposite your hotel, and what that does for not only your career in terms of how you have to respond through crisis management, but also what you go through personally in one of those situations where you really are unable to think about yourself. It kind of doesn't even enter into your mind until you kind of get through it. And it's interestingly, I got named as a bomb magnet for many years in our industry because I've gone through a number of bombings. Sometimes I've stopped asking the question why to God have I gone through it, and know that I had the strength to do it. And every opportunity I was able to really understand more about why these were happening and be able to be in a position of authority to be able to, help people through this, because when you're on an event and a bomb goes off, it's a very traumatic, dangerous experience, not only for us, but also for the people attending and those that have been caught up in it. So I talk about these in the book. I did have terrible addiction problems with drugs and alcohol, and that really was my coping mechanism over the years. And growing up in an industry where is all about booze and drugs and excess, it just propelled me in my life and propelled my addictions into full throttle, shall we say. And so I talk through the book around, how that kind of was my coping mechanism to get through a lot of these traumatic situations, and there's an incredible story of how my use of alcohol, got us into a lot of trouble in Russia, where we end up being blackmailed on an event, and what comes of that, and having to deal with that situation when you're running through an event and you're trying to cope with everything that's happening around it. So there's some great stories in there of a real show and tell all of no holds barred, of the reality of what goes on behind the scenes. We are an industry that I think it looks so glamorous. And I talk about this, I grew up as a child, I was one of four, perfect family, on the outside, it's, two parents, one running multiple businesses, mother in the bank, very senior position, children's in boarding schools, the beautiful country house, the cars, everything. And yet on the inside was this dysfunction, abuse and violence. And I talk about that because the industry is like that. On the outside is this glamorous, all attended, drug-infused industry or booze-infused, whatever it is. And yet it's really chaotic, and that terminology of being like swans and paddling like hell underneath is very true for us. So I use that as an analogy, and it's no wonder I went into a career where I got such validation, because I just didn't get it at home as a child. So I talk about a lot of these stories in the book. I give some teasers of, being on site in events where, we have, certain individuals, we have speakers missing, and we're having to roam the streets of major cities to find them at 5 and 6 a.m. to get them back to be on stage by 8 o'clock. And I talk about these stories, in the book, and, the levels we have to go to as a meeting planner to make sure that we deliver that event no matter what, and end up in that matter what club. So there's also hilarious stories, which tell, really the truth behind some of the excess-driven activities that go on, and probably from people that you least expect it from.
Give us an idea of a couple of these types of events, because I think some people have this idea that events means a wedding, and it's not really, You're not doing weddings, right?
No. These are major corporate events. These are Fortune 500 companies that are, away with their teams, or in this particular case, it was a medical convention where a big pharma was taking their doctors away, and they were presenting a symposium at a major medical convention. And, we had groups of doctors, and, I would say doctors in our industry, they're some of the worst for going off radar on these types of events, where it's, it's kind of like, while the mice is way, the cat plays.
Oh, yeah.
And so, this particular event, we were struggling. We'd all gone out for dinner. We'd done a big group dinner the night before. Everybody ended up packing into Pat O'Brien's after dinner. And 60% of the group goes back to the hotel to go home, and then the other 40% carry on throughout the night. And when you're missing a speaker that is due to present a major symposium the following day, the client only wants that to go as smoothly as possible, because their job is on the line. And so hence why we're roaming the streets, at 5 a.m. In New Orleans to find this doctor, to get him back to the hotel which we literally did. We had his room key. We opened the door. We threw him in the shower. We threw coffee down his neck. And he went onto stage at 8 a.m. like nothing happened. This is what we have to do.
Well, that's a real rock star.
Well, you could call it that. I think over the years that we would call it. And, you know, I remember, Douglas, thinking to myself at that time, I never want to be this person. I don't want to be this person that is causing so much chaos, you know, and the effect that was having on the team. And yet I became that person through my addiction, through the use of drugs, through the use of alcohol. I became that person in years to come. And so, you know, it's amazing how we see things and predictions, and we get a choice of which way we go. You know, and that definitely played out a lot in my own life. And the intensity, the stress that we go through. You know, it's no wonder that the industry, you know, being an event planner it was voted last year by Forbes as in the top 5 most stressful jobs in the world, you know, alongside first responders in a major war. I think that tells you quite a lot about, you know, what we have to deal with in terms of stress-related items and bringing together. It's a huge coordination of multiple suppliers, and it all resides on the back of the meeting planner.
You talked about addiction and alcohol and drugs sort of in the past tense, so I assume that you are clean and sober at this point?
Correct. Yeah. I am. I'm. You know, well into my 6th year of sobriety now. Thank goodness.
Oh well, that's good.
And I haven't back.
But you're still in the same business. How is it different now, without the booze and the drugs?
You know, it's a very different side of the business. You know, we attract different types of clients. We very much are big advocates of zero tolerance alcohol on site at events, particularly for our teams. We don't allow it. We run things very differently to how they were run in the past. And as a consequence of doing that, we tend to attract clients that live the same values and beliefs that we do, and vice versa, that believe that their employees or their attendees, you know, that their health, their well-being is as important as the event. You know, long gone are, I think, actually that's wrong. Long gone are the days. I mean, I can tell you stories of people being killed on events because, you know, they drank too much and ended up in an accident, you know, and I think that's the reality of that. We are big advocates of ensuring that dinners and parties and things like that there is a, you know, responsibility pledge when it comes to how you know, alcohol and drinks are served.
Well, we do have to wind this down. Thank you so much for coming on. And the book is called
Don't worry.
Eventually, Gareth, Truths and Lies of the Events Industry, a story of bombs, booze, and blackmail. I didn't know that was literal bombs. I thought that was sort of you know, media bombs. But wow, that's okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There is literal bombs in there. So
scary.
Thank you for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. And the book launches tomorrow, which will be June 8th. Best of luck. Best of luck. I hope it does well.
Thank you very much. I look forward to it.